Today I want to talk about a brand new wrestling book that is just out in time for Christmas. Now, I have to say, obviously, this book is just coming out now, so I haven't had the chance to read it, but certainly, from my experiences, has piqued my interest in buying this book. It's called A Stamp Collection. It is a book by Texas wrestling legend Mr. Dennis Stamp. Now, what this book is a collection of stories, anecdotes, and poems. And I have to say, after meeting Mr. Dennis Stamp just a few months ago here in Dundee, Scotland, as part of Scottish Wrestling Entertainment's Hell for Lycra 11 weekend, I'm really interested in giving this book a good read, and obviously when I do, I will put up a proper review of it here on my YouTube channel. It's a collection of short stories from the world's most famous unknown wrestler. I'll read what it says on the description, as this book is available, as said, now to order on createspace.com. That is createspace.com. createspace.com. It will also be available on Kindle by the end of today and on Amazon in the next few days. The book is co-authored by my friend Chris Duke and contains a foreword by a man who Mr. Dennis Stamp has been friends with for many, many years, and another Texas wrestling legend, Mr. Terry Funk. And from what I've heard, it's a really, really good foreword from Mr. Terry Funk. I'll read out the description. It's what it says on createspace.com, where you can buy it now. Before attaining a cult fan following as a result of his appearance in the documentary film Beyond the Mat, Dennis Stamp was a wrestling star who competed across the globe. In his career, he faced the very best athletes in his profession and worked in various territories of the National Wrestling Alliance, the American Wrestling Association, and across Japan. Stamp shares some of his favourite stories and poems which celebrate an industry filled with moments and characters that are simply larger than life. In these tales, Stamp recounts the intensity of his greatest matches and provides us with anecdotes from a life on the road with the top stars of his generation. He reveals the inspirations that kept him fighting in his battle to survive cancer, and shares the emotion of the many friendships he built with promoters, his fellow wrestlers, and the fans. So it certainly piqued my interest to order this one, give it a good read when I can, because I said when I met him this past August at Scottish Wrestling Entertainment's Hell for Lycra 11 weekend, he actually took part in a Legends of Wrestling Q&A session. You can actually see the 5-part series of videos here on my YouTube channel. Just search for Legends of Wrestling. I believe it's 5 parts. You can hear Mr. Dennis Stamp, Road Warrior Animal, Mr. Marty Jones, and Mr. Johnny Saint all tell stories, anecdotes, tales from their lives and their careers. It's really good, and you really do get some very interesting stories, some really good information, and certainly, in my opinion, you will get a really good taste of at least some of the contents of this book. Now, obviously, I said the book's just come out. I've not read it myself. I've not got a copy yet, but certainly, if he tells, even half of some of the similar stories that he does in this book that he did, the Legends of Wrestling Q&A, I'm going to be very interested in reading this book. I mean, some of the stories that he told at the Legends of Wrestling Q&A were having Bret the Hitman Hart's very first matches, meeting the Road Warriors, being trained by Billy Robinson, the legendary Billy Robinson, being in locker rooms for so many of the moments that are still talked about to this day in professional wrestling. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have, they asked the Steve Austins, the John Cenas, the Triple H's, the Rocks about, the Roddy Pipers, the Sergeant Slaughters. They ask the big stars about particular moments and incidents from various companies and involving other wrestling superstars, but it's gentlemen, certainly like Mr. Dennis Stamp, who spent their lives in the locker rooms, who spent their time with the guys, and also, and sometimes even more so, witnessed many of the memorable moments or incidents that occurred there within. So, obviously some of the big stars, they had other appearances to do, they may have been busy elsewhere, but some of them didn't spend, still to this day, don't spend a huge amount in the locker room mixing in with a lot of the other guys, but especially sometimes in those days. But certainly Mr. Dennis Stamp was one of those guys who was in each and every locker room in major companies across the country. As I said, all across Japan, and I'm sure we'll get some of the stories involved in that as well in this book. I mean, Mr. Dennis Stamp was interviewed just last night on Eclipse Sports Radio, on the Bell to Bell program that his co-author, my friend Mr. Chris Duke, actually hosts. It's every Monday at 9 p.m. for an hour. They talk wrestling, a little bit of music, and they talk about what's going on in the wrestling world. And they talked about the book being released just last night, and as I said, it's available now. CreateSpace.com, and the way they were talking, obviously, there was. You'll see on the Legends of Wrestling YouTube videos. Give it a you get, pique your interest as it piqued mine for this book. You'll hear so many stories, and there's so many stories that Mr. Dennis Stamp has. So many poems as well. He writes poems these days, and not just looks after his grandchildren and does other projects. He has so many stories and poems just written down and around his house that he obviously kept in his workspace, that many of them weren't able to make it into the final edit of this book, which means that hopefully, and I'm really hoping this is the case, that if this book is successful, which I hope it is, that we may even see a volume 2, and we'll hear more. We'll be able to read more stories and read more poems from Mr. Dennis Stamp. So I'm really interested in reading this book. As I said, after meeting Mr. Dennis Stamp, he told a lot more stories on the than you can see on the Legends of Wrestling Q&A session, even though he takes over it a couple of times and tells, as I said, many stories about Bret, the Road Warriors, Hulk Hogan, and a lot of the big names in professional wrestling like that. He was continuously telling stories all weekend long. I got to witness some of them before the Q&A sessions kicked off and afterwards as well. We were taking photographs and people were asking him various questions about various things. Absolute tremendous amount of stories, tremendous amount of poems that he has in reserve as well. So I'm really hoping that this book will actually become hugely successful, and we may get perhaps even volumes 2, perhaps volumes 3. Because that many stories, that many anecdotes, and that many poems in reserve, I'm sure all they are waiting and worthy of being published. So that's a book recommendation. You can maybe I read so many wrestling biographies from the likes of Steve Austin and Chris Jericho, and I've got Terry Funk, Dusty Rhodes, Harley Race, so many wrestling biographies. I would think that this book is going to prove to be a really entertaining book for the wrestling fan in your life. So, as I said, CreateSpace.com. It'll be also available on Kindle and Amazon in the next few days, so check it out. It's priced on CreateSpace.com as $19.99. I don't know whether the price will vary on these different different outlets, but I would say check it out. Like I said, Dennis Stamp, one of the guys who spent the time in the locker room, has so many stories, anecdotes to tell, as well as his poems written about his life and career. I think it's really good. It's really piqued my interest. I'm really looking forward to ordering it in the next few weeks and reading it. It's going to be really good. So give it a thought, just to make sure that you know that it is the correct book. It is called, at the front cover, it is this called The Stamp Collection. Dennis Stamp with Chris Duke, foreword by Terry Funk, and the front cover has various photographs of Mr. Dennis Stamp alongside not just Chris Duke, his co-author, but various wrestling personalities, as well as several pictures taken from his recent visit here to Scotland.